Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Alison, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hello. Welcome to your weekly forecast for September 16th to 22nd, 2024. This episode of Cycles of Time is called The Eclipse, the Equinox, and the Polycrisis. And you'll find out why here in a minute. First off, welcome to Eclipse Week here, everyone. The September full moon is typically known as the harvest moon, but this year the Earth is going to be casting a partial shadow upon La Luna, ringing in harvest season and Thursday's autumnal equinox with a powerful lunar eclipse. This full moon eclipse on Tuesday is happening in the human design gate of Crisis, which is opposite the sun in the gate of friction. And both of these, they both sound a little scary, crisis and friction, but they're both energies of finding the diamond in the rough, the silver lining in the black cloud, and using challenges we face to grow and gain life experience. The Fall Equinox, happening on Sunday, is known as Mabon in the pagan wheel of the year, and it's the second of two harvest festivals. The last one we had was the last cross-quarter day called Lammas or Lunasa. And Mabon, this autumnal equinox festival, is known as a time to restore balance and harmony to our lives, as the holiday celebrates a day with equal light and equal dark. So we've got a big week ahead. Again, this week's highlights are going to be that full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, and that's happening at 8:34 p.m. Mountain Standard Time in the human design gate of Crisis. And it could happen on Wednesday, September 18th, if you are in a later time zone. So it's in some time between 17th and 18th of September, Tuesday or Wednesday. Then from Sunday to Friday, we're going to be in the human design gate of friction. The sun will be in the gate of friction opposite the gate of crisis. And then Saturday and Sunday, we're going to be moving into the gate of determination of the self, gate 46. On Sunday as well, we have that September equinox, which is the fall equinox in the northern hemisphere, where we focus most of our energies for the Cycles of Time podcast, and it's the spring equinox in the southern hemisphere. Happy spring equinox to all of you southern hemisphere listeners, if there are any of you out there. Just a note that I do focus on the wheels of the year and the cycles of time from cultures here in the northern hemisphere mostly, because that is what I'm most familiar with, but I have lived in the southern hemisphere in Brazil and near the equator in China, and I am very interested in how the wheels of the year show up in these different regions as well. So I would love to hear from you if you are from the southern hemisphere, but we'll be talking about it like the fall hemisphere, autumnal or fall equinox for the rest of the podcast. That day is known as Mabon in the pagan wheel of the year, and it is also the first day of Libra season. The spring equinox begins Aries season and the fall equinox begins Libra season. So we have made our way across the wheel of the year since I started this podcast on the spring equinox. Kind of wild how much has happened in that short amount of time, those 6 months. It's been just an amazing experience to look at the energies of each week through these various wheels of the year. It's just been profound. So I'm so excited that I've made it this far and another half of the wheel to go. until the next season, I guess. But anyway, in the human design and the I Ching wheel of the year, we have the gate of friction. Gate 6 is where the sun is transiting from yesterday, Sunday through Friday. And then this upcoming Saturday and Sunday into next week, we are going to be in gate 46, the gate of determination of the self. The themes for this week are conflict, crisis, and friction are necessary for growth, expansion, and truth. A balance between being open to new experiences and picky about who and what you let into your life. That is the lunar eclipse, full moon, kind of sun-moon balance right there. Openness versus kind of discernment in a very Pisces, Virgo way. Another theme is a polycrisis requires a poly solution. And finally, a focus on embodiment and grounding practices in the midst of stormy celestial weather. In the Wheel of the Year, which you can always find a diagram on Cycles of Time podcast on Instagram or on Facebook or at astrosomatics.substack.com. Every week I do send out a transcript and image-based and text-based version of this podcast to subscribers for free. So if you'd like to receive this in your inbox every week, you can sign up at astrosomatics.substack.com. And there you can always see the Wheel of the Year with its different rings, symbolizing the different kind of cycles of time that I draw on for this podcast. But our place there in the medicine wheel is we're in the direction west. We're in the whooshing 5-element cycle, element of metal. We're in the pagan season now of Mabon, entering Mabon on the 22nd. The zodiac season, we're finishing up Virgo season and entering Libra from September 22nd to October 22nd. We're in the moon phase, full moon, lunar eclipse in Pisces. And we're in the I Ching hexagram in human design, gate 6 from Monday to Friday and gate 46 on Saturday and Sunday. And again, that's the gate of friction and the gate of determination of the self. So jumping right into it, we'll get started talking about what's on everybody's mind this week, which is the eclipse. We're in the second of 2 eclipse seasons. In my last episode, I talked about what an eclipse season is and why there's always 2 eclipse seasons per year, where there can be 2 or 3 eclipses, actual eclipses within that season, depending on the degrees of the zodiac and the degrees of the ecliptic where the eclipses are happening. But this season, we have 2 eclipses happening. We're going to have this full moon lunar eclipse which is a partial eclipse in Pisces this Tuesday. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to have a new moon solar eclipse in Libra. So this Pisces eclipse is a potent one, and I'll just dive into it. Before I do, I just want to let you know where I am because I tend to do that every week. I'm recording this from the road. I'm on my road trip, my kind of birthday, wedding, visiting family road trip. And right now I am at a rustic 100-year-old beach cabin on the Oregon coast, which is one of my favorite places on earth. I'm up here in this little attic that has a bunch of old iron beds and a view out to the ocean. You can hear the ocean from up here. And this cabin was built in the 30s, and my great-grandparents bought it in the 40s as a place for my great-grandmother to bring her kids while my great-grandfather was away at World War II. And my dad and his brothers grew up coming here, and now their kids and their grandkids come on the weekends and holidays. And it's just a cozy place to sit by a big fire and do a jigsaw puzzle or play some like Chinese checkers and look through old black and white family photo albums. There's a huge bulletin board when you first walk in of all of these old family photos, and it's just got such nostalgia. I've looked at that bulletin board so many times. It dates back generations, and it's just a really amazing thing to still have access to, that kind of continuity of family and place. There's a bunch of crabbing equipment, and there's sand toys in the garage, and there's a big expansive sandy beach with dunes just a short walk down the hill, where it's normally pretty foggy and misty. But yesterday and the day before when we got here was just this gorgeous bluebird day along the coast, and we got to actually spend some time, in the water, splashing around and just feeling like a real tropical beach day, actually. But this morning, it's a little more of the common drizzle and damp. So I got to sit in my grandpa's old recliner and kind of build an outline for this podcast and eat some local smoked salmon jerky and drink hot chocolate. And my daughter is playing with a big tub of old Legos and Barbies, and we're just chilling at the cabin. Of course, it's kind of nice to be a little bit out of service. There's no Wi-Fi here at the cabin, but as I check my phone, I've been inundated by memes from the presidential debate that happened earlier this week. And, it's something that I didn't watch kind of deliberately because I didn't want to break up the road trip with too much politics, but it's definitely been on a lot of people's minds. And so, you can't avoid the memes. And I was very curious about what was going to come about. We've all heard the fear-mongering statements like illegal transgender aliens in Springfield, USA are eating people's pet dogs and cats and stuff like that. I think that was a blend of a couple of the things that Trump said in the debate. But basically, they're words that most of us could never really imagine hearing from a presidential candidate a decade ago. And now they're just kind of unsurprising eye rolls and jokes. My favorite tweets about this debate so far are ones that are to the effect of, if Donald Trump was talking like this at Thanksgiving, you'd take his keys. And stuff like that. Like if he was interviewing for a job, you would walk him out the door. It's, we kind of are all at this place where we agree, or many of us agree, that the rhetoric coming out of this man's mouth is just like beyond belief and just seems just absurd. But here we are. It is a real live presidential debate that has very high stakes. So, after the debate, the infamous single cat lady Taylor Swift officially endorsed Kamala Harris. And we're definitely in the season here in the U.S. of everything being about the election. Right now, we have Fall Equinox and the eclipse and just election frenzy. I never forget exactly how it just converges around this time of year. But it's still every season, every 4 years when this happens, it is kind of wild to just, see how everything gets focused in. So as I sit at this old cabin and look back on old black and white photos, I can't help but thinking that the people in these images had much simpler lives with so much less to think about. We've had, dichotomous and divisive political debates and elections throughout this nation's history and before that, of course. But in this era of rampant global warming and AI and several live-streamed and unapologetic genocides around the world that are just happening in real time and we are witnessing in real time, the stakes in this election seem higher than ever. And, there was just a hurricane approaching New Orleans where I used to live, and that is currently happening. I've seen a few accounts of people, losing power, having a little bit of flooding, but nothing too severe yet. The fires down in San Bernardino, there's also lots of fires happening all across Oregon, and the debate had very little to say about climate change or about these bigger issues. It just seemed to be really focused in on, a lot of kind of like divisive and racist commentary. So, I think that right now we're in this time of global and universalized issues that make the divisive and polarizing nature of debates like this one and elections like this one feel super outdated, I would say. I think that within politics, people will always show up with passion to vote for their personal interests. I think there'll definitely be some voters that turn out this year because they're fearing for their poor cat's life in the hands of immigrants. But we are also now confronted with realities of a deeply interconnected world in crisis. And I think the attempts of grabbing votes by scaring people with really bad stereotypes about specific groups of people just seems so over, so passé. I feel like it's almost on the brink of a joke to those of us who are, beyond the belief that this rhetoric is even happening. But it's really not funny in the least. There's a deliberate and very unacceptable racism that is happening that seems so absurd that we can make jokes about it, and then those jokes turn into memes, and then the memes start spreading around. But really at the core of that is some really terrible racist tropes that should not be spread at all. So there's definitely a lot of conflict and a lot of crisis, if you will, happening. And in the Cycles of Time Wheel of the Year, fittingly, this week's lunar eclipse is falling in Human Design's Gate 36, which is the Gate of Crisis. This gate is also known as the Gate of Inexperience, which is an energy of desiring to explore the depth of our capacity to feel and be transformed through crisis. This Gate 36 is motivated to gain more experience and grow through challenges. And it's all about experiencing life to the fullest and learning from the highs and lows that come with it. The eclipsed full harvest moon is going to be in Pisces, which is a sign associated with that same depth of feeling, with a merging and blurring of boundaries. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, and so I always see Pisces as this time that takes specific things that we've learned from the other seasons of the zodiac and the other signs, and helps us realize that, like everything in our world, these different elements are all deeply interwoven and interconnected. So on the precipice of this election, at the time of year where we're harvesting and synthesizing what we want to take with us into fall and winter, the stakes are definitely high. So we have to think about, during this eclipse and this week, this time of year, what do we wish to see more of in the future? And what can we leave behind to the history books and to the black and white photo albums of days long gone? We're at this, as I mentioned last week in the episode about the season of metal, we're in a season of kind of stripping away the fat and deciding what it is that we want to bring with us from the past and what we want to leave in the past. So as I sit surrounded by memories and nostalgia and ghosts of beach cabin days past, and just a lot of tangible physical photos and memories in that way, I just think about the passage of time. It's hard not to. And think about how different the world is now as far as these crises that we're facing, and what it is that we need to do to face these crises and to learn from them and to grow from them. I think that we will always have our own personal crises to contend with, and to vote based on, for example. But when we live in times of a global polycrisis, it kind of puts a new slant on the energies of this human design gate of crisis and this lunar eclipse. I think it's becoming common vernacular, these terms, the polycrisis or the meta-crisis, and I've kind of seen them everywhere for the past few years. And what that really is just an intersection of lots of different simultaneous global crises that are happening, that are major and all interdependent and interaffective on each other, like the climate crisis, of course, political instability, the cost of living, inequality, social injustices, economic recession. And yeah, global polycrisis is happening when there's crises in multiple global systems at the same time, becoming causally entangled in ways that can cause major harm. So as we work through this gate of crisis and this eclipse, it's hard to focus in on just a single issue, and sometimes that can be very overwhelming. But the kind of keynote to this gate where the moon is falling is that, you know, there's opportunity within crisis, and there is, if we are open to the breadth and depth of human experiences, there will be crisis that comes with that openness to possibilities and to a wide variety of experiences. But through that, we can learn some deep lessons and grow as people. The Pisces-Virgo axis, where this eclipse is happening with the sun in the sun in Virgo and the moon in Pisces, is about health and healing. So it's health and healing both through seeing interconnectedness through the lens of watery Pisces. Pisces is all about that merging and interconnection. And then the other way we can heal is through piecing apart the issues through the lens of analytical and earthy Virgo. This Pisces new moon on Tuesday, Pisces full moon on Tuesday, is conjunct Neptune during this eclipse. And Neptune is the watery planet of dreams and illusions and fantasies that is also the modern planetary ruler of the sign Pisces. And that conjunction between the moon and Neptune in Pisces is really making this eclipse energy feel extra boundless and nebulous and kind of enmeshed. So, you know, not the best time to feel super structured, but definitely it will call attention to our openness to experiences, and hopefully not cause too many personal crises beyond what we're already dealing with here. But if it does, just know that this too shall pass, that eclipses come with a purpose of kind of clearing out karmic debris. And I see them, as just a perspective shift, a time of the year when we can really kind of get a fresh glance at what's working and what's not working for us anymore. So on the opposite side of the sky from the moon and the gate of crisis is the sun in gate 6, which is the gate of friction. And this is the last full gate of Virgo season. Gate 6 is kind of similar to gate 36 in the sense that it's about finding that silver lining in the black cloud. And, you know, friction and crisis seem kind of like similar words. But like all opposite gates that are united by a similar energy, so every gate in the wheel that lies opposite each other is kind of united by, a unifying axis that also has kind of a polarity where the lessons of gate 6 and 36 are going to come from opposite sides of the coin, even though they're within a unifying axis. So Pisces in gate 36, the gate of conflict, is really about welcoming in all experiences and breaking down boundaries and merging them together in order to learn and grow, and just taking the good with the bad, taking everything in and recognizing that, like, when we seek experiences, we cannot discriminate and discern between which experiences we're going to get. So that's the energy of the eclipse. But on the other side of the sky, Virgo in gate 6, where the sun is about being discerning and picky and discriminating, the classic Virgo traits. And it's this final gate of Virgo season that is distilling that energy of Virgo, that is about kind of constantly checking who and what is right for you and what's not right for you, and being choosy and boundaried about who and what we let in. So when you think about it, both modes of existence, the super choosy and picky, or the super open and welcoming of all experiences, both of those can lead to conflict and friction. And this full moon eclipse could highlight the tension between those two ways of being. In a lunar eclipse, the Earth is blocking the light of the sun as it radiates onto the moon. And that visibility of the Earth through the Earth's shadow on the moon, for me, really is an indicator of reminding us to stay grounded and to check in with the truths from our own earthly bodies and earthly experiences, instead of getting too caught up in our ego's aspirations, which are represented by the sun. The sun is like our consciousness and our ego. And we also don't want to put too much attention onto the moon, which represents our emotionality and kind of our constantly changing feelings. And so most normal full moons are kind of a ping pong match or a mirroring between the sun and the moon, between our consciousness and what we can see and our willpower, and the kind of subterranean lunar emotional things that are beneath the surface a little bit. And so there's oftentimes this back and forth kind of energy in a full moon that can create excitement or it can create tension. But full moons are definitely heightened times as far as bringing up the polarities between these very real parts of our lives. But eclipses, because we are noticing and we're paying attention to the fact that the Earth is between the sun and the moon in a full moon, and we're seeing it with the shadow of the Earth on the moon as it blocks the sun's rays, it really does return attention to our bodies and to our groundedness, to our presence in the moment and on this Earth. And yeah, it really brings attention to where we are in this current iteration of time. So if you look to the house of your birth chart that contains Pisces, you can get insights on how this eclipse could affect you. And lunar eclipses tend to bring swift and often unexpected endings and conclusions to things. And so looking at where that's going to happen in your chart, or doing some grounding practices that bring you home to yourself, like some deep breathing, breath work, some self-massage, some connecting with nature, something that really just brings you to the tangible reality, can be really helpful during these celestially intense times. And the last lunar eclipse in Pisces that there was happened on September 16th, 2016. So you can also think back to what was happening in your life around that time for clues to this current cycle. If we look at the gene keys, the sun in discerning gate 6 this week is bringing us the gift of diplomacy and tact. And the moon in gate 36 is bringing the gift of compassion for humanity. So as you know, within the gene keys, if you've been listening to this, I like to bring in the gene keys to the word and the verbiage of human design. Sometimes it can be very kind of on to the point. And I like that the gene keys kind of has different frequencies that are very related, but bring in ideas of kind of like what can be a good thing about something like crisis or friction. So the gate of crisis would be its higher frequency, if we're working with it that way, would be a humanity, a compassion for humanity, because we're working through crisis by bringing in all of these experiences and being open to all of these experiences. And that can also be very empathetic and compassionate by being able to see all of the different types of experiences that people are having in this world. That's this openness and this accepting kind of energy. And then the gift of where the sun is, gate 6, is diplomacy, that nitpicking, choosy, picky kind of way of that feels like friction at times when we're being overly picky and choosy, perhaps, is also a great tool within diplomacy, within not letting everything in, but making sure that you are looking at each different piece of something, kind of analyzing it and breaking it down so that we can be diplomatic. So both of them are, again, similar in this way, where we're bringing in compassion, openness, humanitarianness, and also a certain discernment and diplomatic nature of being choosy of what we let in and what we don't let in. So that's the overarching energy of this eclipse, is finding a balance. And the earth, in the middle of the sun and the moon, is making herself known. And so with that, we're called to remember the middle ground, which is that tact and diplomacy and step-by-step working through conflict and friction are required for our collective humanity to find greater peace in the world and to find growth as a species. But at the same time, an openness and compassion and willingness to experience lots of different things is also needed to kind of begin the diplomatic process, to know where you can start being a little more discerning and judicial. And so, we have a lot flowing through this week. And with that conjunction to Neptune, it could definitely feel confusing. Like, I've seen several memes on Instagram recently about something to the effect of well, can't we agree to disagree? And people are like, no, we can't agree to disagree. Like, the stakes are too high right now. We're at a point where you can't, be friends with somebody who has a different viewpoint than you, because the viewpoints lead to our rights, lead to the laws that create human rights for different groups of people. And so, being friendly with somebody who holds a different viewpoint can actually be dangerous. And so that is the picky and choosing nature of where the sun is right now. It's like, actually, no, we can't agree to disagree. That's really not possible in these times. And then at the other side, there is an anti-cancel culture vibe that I'm seeing. Anti-cancel culture, like, we have to listen to other people's viewpoints right now. It's the only way we can be compassionate and we can make our way through, is by being willing to listen and perhaps agreeing to disagree, right? And so I don't have the answer here on what the best way is, and that's the point of these full moons on these polar opposites of these thematic axes, and also the eclipses, just making that even a little bit more intense, is kind of, maybe this eclipse will help you know where you lie on that spectrum, right? And there might be certain things that come up in your life that have to do with that, like the degree of pickiness and choosiness versus openness. And again, it's this earth to say, hey, stay grounded within yourself, within your body, within your own experience, rather than getting caught up on the ideal way of being. Like, is it ideal to be open? Is it ideal to know what you want, to know what you like and what you deserve? And the truth is that it's circumstantial, and it really depends on the situation, right? But this eclipse is here to show us something about that. So, I look at the Polycrisis in the Gate of Crisis, and just think about how, with the amount of Neptunian confusion there is with like trying to figure out how to live in these times with so many different crises happening, we have to just recognize that polycrisis can't be met by a singular solution, but it has to be met by a poly solution. Lots of different interwoven solutions, just in the way that the crises themselves are interwoven and interconnected. So this eclipse is a great reminder of the cycles of openness and discernment that are needed as we work our way toward a better and more nuanced solutions for everyone to thrive. We are not in an era of black and white being the solution for anything, and it's just becoming more and more obvious the more that rhetoric is being used, how outdated it is. Like, we have Technicolor and beyond, we have AI, we have, so much greater technology beyond like a black and white camera or silver processing, for example, in photography. So if we think about it with that as a metaphor, it's kind of like, just noticing that like just like the technology has evolved, our solutions and our frameworks have to also evolve into a more complex type of multicolor philosophy rather than black and white, rather than a two-party system, a blame game, and toward a more compassionate and diplomatic way of living in the future. So on this eclipse, may this Virgo Pisces axis of healing help us all find our way there to this Technicolor dream world. Haha. Moving on from that rant, Sunday the 22nd is the Fall Equinox, Libra season's beginning, and Mabon. And right before that happens, on Saturday the 21st, the sun is transiting into Gate 46, which is the gate of determination of the self. And so I will talk a lot more about this on next week's podcast. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet because you can probably hear lots of sounds from my family and the old creaky cabin in the background. So I'm just going to wrap this up pretty quick. But next week I'm excited because I'm going to be having Rebecca Baker, who is a friend of mine and a mentor from my breathwork training that I did with integrative breath. And she'll be coming on the podcast because it's her birthday on September 22nd. So we're going to talk a lot more about her birthday being, she's an equinox baby. So talk a lot about the equinox and about Libra season, the Virgo Libra cusp, and the pagan holy day of Mabon, the harvest festival, in that next episode. Before we do that, just to round out, Gate 46 is the gate that's going to be the energy over the weekend, and it's the energy that encapsulates this cusp between Virgo and Libra seasons. So I just want to let you know that if you're feeling any kind of tension or nervousness about this conflict and friction, even these words can bring up tension in our bodies, and I can say things like, oh, well, crisis is an opportunity, or friction is needed to grow, right? Like, we can know these things, but still feel a little bit, like tense when we hear that something's going to be off. And that's not my intention here necessarily, but just a little bit of preparation. But I do want to let you know that after that, for the equinox, we're kind of coming into a bit more of a harmonious gate, and harmony is a key word of Libra season, so it's quite appropriate. But I think that Gate 46, the determination of the self, will be a welcome energy after an eclipse week of friction being mirrored by conflict. Gate 46 is going to touch on themes of harmony and beauty and balance as we reach the very end of harvest season and enter Libra's domain. In the I Ching, Gate 46 is known as Earth over Wind. It's also known as Rising Up. And in the Gene Keys, its gift is delight. So, some good words to dangle like a carrot in front of your week. I feel like a little recap of Virgo season here, in Virgo season, my consensus of all of the gates, the human design gates that we went through and the energies we experienced during Virgo season was just up and down. There was so much up and so much down. And I felt that in my own personal life too. Again, Virgo is a mutable sign. It's a sign of an end of a season. And so it's definitely a time of navigating kind of inwardness and outwardness. And it's so different than the fixed energy of hot Leo season, for example, or the cardinal initiating energy of the beginning of summer with Cancer. Reaching the end of the summer and the end of a certain season into a mutable sign is always a little bit confusing and a little bit exhausting in its own way. I feel it in my body. But when we think about it, we started Virgo season with the gate of sexuality, kind of coming into meeting the other. And then we went into the gate of aloneness, which was the hermit gate. Then we went to the gate of confusion, where so much raw data and information is flowing in. And then that was answered by the gate of realization, which was about kind of forming boundaries and concepts out of that raw data and making steps forward towards what we believe in. And then the gate of friction is happening, and at the end of that, the determination of the self. So it's a lot of, I feel like some zodiacal seasons have a lot of consistency in their arc, kind of their story arc of the different gates and energies that we're experiencing. But Virgo has kind of been a lot of ups and downs and ins and outs, kind of a turbulent ride with a lot of profound internal depths. And it's been beautiful. I've learned so much this season myself, but I think I'm ready for a little break in the intensity. So this gate of the determination of the self, gate 46, might bring a little bit of that. It's kind of a gate that is focused on growing upward with determination, like a tree coming out of the earth. And I've talked a lot about embodiment with this eclipse, and lunar eclipse is really needing us to focus on our bodies in the present moment. And this gate 46 over the weekend after the eclipse will really add to that embodiment. It is kind of all about ecstatically enjoying being an embodied human being and finding pleasure in living in the physical plane and pursuing creative endeavors for their own sake. So yeah, it's very similar to what I've been recommending for the lunar eclipse, just a reminder of our embodied experiences in the here and now. And one thing I read as a quote for this gate for the weekend is the Ram Dass, be here and now. Just experiencing life through our bodies and through our senses and expressing what is alive in the moment. I have my natal Mercury and my natal moon on my birth chart in this gate. And my Mercury is at 28 degrees of Virgo and my moon is at 3 degrees of Libra. So I've always thought of myself as, Virgo, Mercury, Libra, moon. But it's interesting that they're both contained within this one gate of human design. If you're familiar with human design or the I Ching or the gene keys, you'll know that each gate is further subdivided into 6 lines. And so each one of those lines represents about a day. And so my Mercury is in gate 46.1 and my moon is in gate 46.6. So they have subtly different energies, but are still within this embodied kind of ecstatic joy of being in a body. And they say that this embodied gate can always put you in the right place at the right time if you let go of expectations and just ground into the moment. So I'm kind of into having my moon and my Mercury here. They seem like a very good counterbalance to my son's mental state of gate of confusion that I talked about a couple weeks ago. So Anyway, we'll talk more about this gate next week and Libra season ahead. But for this week and the weekend with the lunar eclipse, my advice would be to focus on practices that cultivate some inner balance and live in moderation. And the universe will be providing enough wild cards. So try to just chill a little bit this week if you can. And get into your body. Like the breath work, the self-massage, the, smelling a flower, like hugging a tree, all of those things. I probably recommend these more weeks than I know. If I listened back, I'd usually recommend all of these things. But in this week in particular, grounding down into the earth and knowing that the earth is holding you while the sun and moon do their little dance will help stabilize through the week. And just know that whatever storms crop up during eclipse season are here to kind of act like pressure release valves that clear the air after a big storm for a beautiful, expansive, and open sky of new possibilities. So I will see you next week for a lovely interview with Rebecca Baker. Of the Sacred Pause is her business, and I look forward to entering this new season with you all. Thank you so much for listening, as always, and for all of your shares and comments and likes and all of those things that you do. I really appreciate you being here, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.